Now, as I've mentioned before, I've made loads and loads of mistakes in business when it comes to investing and so on. However, what are the habits that I have cultivated, which I think have actually changed my life over the last more than 10 years or indeed 15 years or whatever? The biggest ones are this. Now, number one, before talking about some things which are a bit more sophisticated, keeping things simple has absolutely been important. In other words, sometimes the simple things are more effective. I can remember a quote which says, most of success is just turning up. I can't remember who actually said that, but it's very true. People often forget that. It's a bit like if you want to go to the gym, right? You have to put your gym clothes on, you have to go to the gym. It sounds obvious, but many people don't even do that. And it's the same with business, investing, money in general. People forget that the basics are important. Getting the basics right, keeping it simple is very important. Now, number two, I would say never trying to time the market. Basically, this saves you time, money, and worry. The more you try to time the market, the more it will cost you both in investment returns, sometimes tax, and also indeed how much you worry, right? Because if you're always looking at your account, you're going to be more worried, right? I can remember looking at an incredible statistic that the average DIY investor looks at their account up to 10 or even 15 times a day. I think that's a crazy statistic and shows that a lot of people out there are not just buying and holding, they're buying and trading, so to speak. Another thing is leverage. Now, what I mean by that is leveraging time, money, other people in business, of course. Leverage is absolutely key. I mean, I'll give you a great example of this, right? Even look what we're doing now, right? With the internet, it's a great example of leveraging technology, which is also leveraging time. If you think about it, in the olden days, if this was 50 years ago, to get my message out there, I would have had to literally knock on doors, whereas of course now you don't have to do that. But the same when it comes to money or anything, leverage is absolutely key, because one thing we've all got in common is we've only got 24 hours in a day. So there's nobody out there who can literally be the most hardworking person in the world. Now, sure, working hard, working smart is absolutely important, but you can't outwork every single other human being in the world. There's always going to be somebody who's going to work just as hard as you. So you do have to leverage time, energy, money, technology, other people if you are running your own business as well as investing. Another thing is being unemotional as much as is humanly possible. I know as where a market's going up or down, just having a very even keel. That's a very important habit to get acquainted with. Also, number 5, I would say, is using money as soon as possible. What do I mean by that? I noticed something very early on when I was quite young. If I had some money, even if it was a small amount of money, and I invested it, I would forget about it. Whereas if it was just left in my account, it's more likely I would spend it, waste it, and actually regret it, because I wouldn't think about it too much. Because psychologically, I think you feel richer if you've got a lot of cash in your account, even if it's not a rational way of looking at it, because you're no richer than if you had invested that money. Of course, in fact, you're going to be poorer because you're going to lose to inflation. So one thing I've got into the habit of is this: if I ever get money, always investing the money straight away. That doesn't mean investing 100% of it, because of course you need money for daily life, you need money for emergencies. But beyond that level of needing it for daily life and emergencies, investing it straight away. Because even if you invested 2 or 3 days after, you might actually spend more money than you think. And there's been a lot of studies that have been done that have shown if you invest 1 day after you're paid, if you're a salaried employee, you can actually save and invest 2 or 3 times what you would invest normally. So the mistake a lot of people make is they think, well, I can only afford to invest $200 a month or $300 or $1,000, whatever is applicable to you. But bear in mind, if you put in a direct debit 1 day after you're paid, you'll be surprised if you were to know that you could actually invest much more than you would expect. I think also another key thing has been not dramatically increasing my spending. What I mean by that is this: a certain amount of lifestyle inflation is normal, right? You can't live like you're a student, say if you're in your 30s or 40s or whatever, right? But by the same token, a lot of people, they make a lot more money in their late 20s, 30s, but they just spend all their money. So I think one key mistake I made early on is I did that to a certain extent for 1 or 2 years after graduation, but since then I've never made that mistake again. So for me, I don't just increase spending as I earn more. And that is one of the biggest mistakes people make. And also I'd say being careful about property as well, because I've seen so many people abroad especially getting their fingers burned with property and land. Now, I do think in certain situations buying property can be a good idea. Let's say if you're in your home country, you know you're going to live in your home country for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever. And this is very key, buying on mortgage or buying a house is considerably cheaper than renting, which is the case in some countries or cities. It can make sense and can be a great idea to buy. But I think a lot of people make the mistake of just saving up for a deposit, on a house, and then all their money is gone, right? They stay at home for a few years, they save up for a deposit, they buy a house, they're 30 years old, they have no liquidity because it's all in their house. And I think that's a key mistake you should absolutely try to avoid.